guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. This from a guy, sounds like he's probably in his very late 60s or even 70s at this point, and he shares his story about events that happened like 50 years ago in the mid-70s when he was in the military, dealing with the type of things that happened in the 70s, like, well, I'm sure you can figure it out. You've seen the movies or you lived through it. But in this particular case, involving open marriages, open relationships, and they were just as disastrous back then as they are now. And you're going to see here how he discovers this and what happens to the people involved in the situation, particularly the woman whose idea it was. It didn't end well for the husband, and it definitely didn't end well for her either. That'll be a very good one to go over here because I like to share stories from decades ago to show you that the same crap happened back then as it does now, and that men and women are the same back then as they are now, and that's why these stories are relevant no matter where you live or who you deal with and encounter in the world. And also, just once again, how these open marriages don't work. And if your gal brings it up, usually she already has somebody in mind who's already cheating, and it's best to cut ties and part ways. Otherwise, you can guarantee a whole lot of suffering. So it starts off, he says here, Dear SSM. Or actually, he says, Dear SSM Letters. He says, I never thought this could happen to me. Points to anyone who gets the Penthouse reference. So he's referring to Penthouse magazine. I think I'm probably the last generation that actually looked at those things back in the day. I had my stash of Penthouses, and it was funny, my girlfriends from high school and college, they loved to read them. I'd be looking at the pictures, they're reading the stories. But in my mind, it's like, hey, it got them all worked up, so it worked for me. Anyway. You've done several stories on the disastrous aftermath of open relationships. This is a story of an extreme case that happened to a group that I briefly met. Some background here. I was born and grew up in a small town. We're talking 3 traffic lights, 1 high school, 20-man police department. I had a couple of short, informal relationships in high school until the middle of my senior year when I started to seriously date one gal. We were exclusive but never had relations as she wanted to wait and I was a gentleman. Nobody's a gentleman. Come on here. We pretended to be gentlemen when we were younger, but we weren't really gentlemen. We just thought that's what you're supposed to do. One thing that kind of added to the excitement was that her father was a bigot who didn't believe in interracial relationships. So all of our dating was undercover. As soon as I graduated in the mid-70s, I joined the military on a delayed enlistment program and went off to boot camp. My girlfriend wrote to me weekly and I dropped a line whenever I could. He says, tip for you guys going to boot camp, late night meditation sessions on the Thunder Bucket or promo times to catch up on letter writing. I graduated and went home for 2 weeks leave before starting my A school. I got home on a Saturday and called my girl to set up a date. She informed me that she couldn't get away because of her father. I thought, okay, maybe later. That night, I was driving around with my best friend and we passed by the local movie theater and guess who was standing in line with some dude? Yeah, I was pissed. So, yeah, let's also bring up the fact that having serious girlfriends in the military, same shit, she's cheating on him. That sucks. Yeah, I was pissed. So my buddy and I went to a local tavern of ill repute who believed that the legal drinking age was more of a guideline than a hard and fast rule. I'd be like, if you're serving in the military and, you're risking your life, you know what? You can have a freaking beer, for goodness sake. We were drinking beer and shooting pool when a dark-haired beauty with big brown eyes came up to talk to us. I was just out of boot camp, so I was confident, buff, tanned, and handsome, and she seemed very interested. Hey, the old man in uniform thing. After a bit, she moved on and hung out with some other people. My friend clued me in on Eve. She was the same age as we were, but had lived in a nearby, even smaller town, and was a free spirit. Meaning that if she liked you, she would likely put out. Well, that's what it meant then, that's what it means now. I asked my friend if he's banged her, to which he replied with an enthusiastic, oh, hell yeah. Yeah, well, I'm sure, as much as she was hot, I wouldn't want to be crossing swords, if you will, anything like that. I don't want to do the gal my buddy banged. I then asked if he'd mind if I went for it, and he told me nope, that she was the universal joint, a term that we have for girls that would mount on any drive shaft at any angle. So drunk and angry, I talked her up, kissed several times, end up in her car in the parking lot in a semi-nude state. She asked if I'd like to go to a party, and by then my Mr. Wiggles was fully in control, so I said yes. Dude, you named your you-know-what Mr. Wiggles? Jesus, you could have come up with a better, cooler name than that, but okay. We drove to a house that was out of town and back from the country road. There were cars parked in front, lights on, music playing. We just walked in, and there I was, looking at my first group activity. I was taken aback, but Mr. Wiggles wasn't in charge. We're going to have to hear this Mr. Wiggles, the whole fucking story. So, this is the 70s, and a big surprise, a big ORGY going on in this special house. We grabbed drinks and sat on the couch where she filled me in. The place belonged to a couple nicknamed Floozy and Wimp that had one or two of these parties a month for a select group of people. Eve had been a junior in school, working a part-time job when she met Floozy, who eventually invited her to one of these parties. Eve's mom was alcoholic, and her stepdad had been trying to do stuff to her for years. The party seemed a better alternative to her home life. Eve told me that after the first time she'd been to a few more, but it wasn't a regular thing for her. Yeah, sure. Where was the first place she took you? That place. Not a regular, huh? Oh, I never do this. That type of line. She then pointed out the couple. Floozy was in the middle of the party room being made airtight by 3 men, and it looked like 2 others were waiting for their turn. Wimp, still fully clothed, was sitting in a chair with a shot of something, watching his wife get railed while he rubbed himself. So we got, they're the owners of the house, and they had the open marriage. And she's getting plowed by 3 dudes at once, with 2 other guys waiting in line, taking a number. And he's there on the couch watching. There was a group of women off to the side, and others wandering around either watching or waiting their turn. I was thinking of leaving, but then Eve started kissing me, pulled off her top, no bra, and knelt in front of me. We were like, I got 5 minutes. While she was taking care of business, another woman, wearing nothing but heels and panties, sat next to me and started kissing me. Mr. Wiggles was in complete control by now, so I was going with it until somebody lit up a joint. We've been warned repeatedly in boot camp that the first thing A school would be a piss test, and failure would be a big chicken dinner, bad conduct discharge. I told Eve I had to go and why. She said she understood and that we could go to her place, and then asked if I'd like the other woman to come along. Again, being the gentleman, I turned and asked if she'd like to join us. She said sure, jumped off the couch, went to a pile of clothes, grabbed what I assumed were hers, and then went over to a man who was engaged with another woman. The lady, and I'm not giving her a name since she never gave it, kissed the man and said something to him. He looked at Eve and I, smiled and nodded, and the 3 of us left for Eve's trailer. Of course, Eve lives in a trailer. 1970s, huh? I guess maybe that was Sodom and Gomorrah 2.0 or Sodom and Gomorrah 3.0. But whatever. A few hours later, Eve's phone rang and she answered and then handed the phone to the lady saying, "It's your husband." Her part of the conversation was more or less, "Yeah, okay, I'll be ready, love you." She then said that she had time for a quickie, which we had, before she got up, got dressed, and went to wait outside. A few minutes later, a car pulls up, she gets in, and they drive off. I wasn't sure if it was the same man she'd kissed at the party. Oh, for God's sakes. Over the years, Eve and I would occasionally hook up whenever I was home or on leave, since I was stationed close enough. Could wrangle a 96-hour pass, we kept in touch by letter, and this is how I learned about this upcoming tragedy. So now we're getting into the people that were hosting these parties who had the open marriage. And by the way, thank God you always wear protection. Eve didn't get pregnant with any of your kids. It says the story here is a couple of years after the initial hookup, Eve wrote me that Floozy and Wimp had separated and that Floozy was living with her. Oh my God. It seems that Wimp had decided that he was no longer comfortable with his wife doing other dudes. She didn't want to stop, so moved out. Eve said that while she was originally okay with the arrangement, Floozy had quickly worn out her welcome by having a constant stream of men and women come over for their naked parties. Good Lord. Eve said that at first it was kind of exciting, but soon became tedious, and she felt like she was living in a cat house. Or a cat trailer. In her next letter, she told me that Floozy and Wimp had gotten back together. Their compromise was that there'd be no more parties, but they'd have what is called today an open marriage, but what we used to call knucking futz. Several months go by with no mention of them, naked parties, or married dating. Then in the middle of the letter, she says that Wimp offed himself and Floozy went off the deep end. I heard she's in the hospital under heavy sedation. There was an investigation and had been a shitstorm here. So they went from throwing those parties to her coming back, and they got back together with the open marriage. And how'd that work out? He offed himself, and now her life's a mess. These things don't ever work. And why that moron stayed with her, he's probably just so worn down and didn't have the balls to kick her to the curb. I said, WTF. It seemed as though Wimp wanted things to stop. Floozy did not, and he saw no other way out. The details, there was a series of events that some of us pieced together based on info that we got from some acquaintances in the sheriff's office and known facts and rumors. Apparently, after they got back together, the party stopped, but Floozy continued to date others, sometimes spending the night and even going away for weekends. One Friday morning, after she'd left on one of her weekend dates, Wimp cleared out all their bank accounts. Don't know exactly how much was there, but it was probably in the mid 5 figures. Other than a few $100 found in Wimp's wallet, the rest of the money was never found. Did he spend it, give it away, bury it in the backyard? He'd also changed the beneficiary for his insurance policies to his estranged sister who lived in another state. So this dude took all their money, distributed it, they never could find it, changed the beneficiary of his insurance to someone other than his wife, and then he offed himself. Now, I don't know how the insurance would pay for that if he offed himself, but okay, fine, whatever. They fought years before getting involved with this Floozy and parted ways. Their parents had died before, so Wimp had no family and no friends, and were other than the ones that his wife was banging. He then either hired someone to clean the house top to bottom, or he did it himself. On Saturday, he bought a bottle of expensive scotch, went home, moved an armchair just to the front of the door, stripped naked, sat down, and started to drink. Sometime either late Sunday night or early Sunday morning, he finished half the bottle. He put his shotgun under his chin. Holy shit. Floozy didn't go home until Monday morning, was dropped off by her date, and opened the door to a scene from hell. She came into their house to find him on the chair right in front of the door, the aftermath of him doing what he did, and that mess. And let me guess, it's all about her. About mid-morning, a call was made to the sheriff's office about a woman in distress walking down the road. Floozy was either in complete catatonic shock, crying uncontrollably, or screaming as she ran down the road. Depending on which rumor you believed, in any case, she was reportedly incoherent, so EMS was called, and she was sedated and carted off. Jesus Christ. Coincidentally, the responding officer had been part of the party club. He knew who she was and where she lived, so they went to the house to see what happened. One rumor was that he called it in after puking his guts out on the front steps. This poor bastard, he thought that he thought his life just couldn't go on, so he ended it over this piece of garbage. And it's such a shame. At the end of the day, he made his choice, but this is why, guys, what happens when you allow yourself to make your whole world your woman and treat her like that, and then she could treat you accordingly. It's not worth ending yourself. You can move on somehow. But he did what he did. But at least he raided their bank account. She didn't get any money. In the aftermath, even though it was obvious that Wimp had done the deed, a perfunctory investigation was initiated. In one of those cosmic FU events, the investigating officer learned not only about the parties, but that, unknown to him, his wife had taken part in them. The investigating officer found that his wife was sneaking off and effing dudes at their parties. Oh, this is going to be good. He went full Shiva, destroyer of worlds. Small town, so soon everybody knew who was involved and what had been happening. Marriages ended, friendships broke apart, families disowned, people. The only surprising thing was that the secret had been kept for so long, but back then, in the mid-70s, there was no social media, no selfies other than Polaroids, and a stigma was still attached to this behavior in small towns. Felicity was hospitalized on a off-herself watch for a long time. She had no savings, no insurance money, no real family, so she tried to sell the house. Due to its history, there was no interest even though it was a fire sale price. Eventually, the bank foreclosed. Oh, poor girl. I don't feel bad for her. I never really knew Floozy or cared, but I heard that she had been abandoned by all of her SCX buddies and buddettes and ended up leaving town for parts unknown. Would I have stayed at the original party if someone hadn't fired one up? I really don't know. I didn't feel comfortable, but I was young, stupid, horny, and full of piss, vinegar, and testosterone. All I can say is that later in life, I found myself in a similar situation and walked away. Was that because of the original aftermath or that I inherently felt it was wrong? Again, I can't say for sure. Well, that's the take what lessons you want from this story. Well, there you go, gentlemen. 50 years ago, mid-70s, and people were doing the same crap that they're doing today, just obviously not social media and everything, and no cell phones and dating sites and all that, or hookup sites like Tinder, but still, same crap, same miserable results. It got out, and all these families were broken up over it. People were disowned from other families. Marriages broke up. And this guy thought there was no other way out, ended himself. And that's terrible. But at the end of the day, he was a grown-ass man, made his choice. So let this be a lesson to all you guys out there that if your girlfriend or your wife brings up the subject of open marriage, open relationship, it is over. And for God's sakes, no matter how hurt you feel and alone, do not end yourself. Talk to somebody that cares. Somebody's got to care, and get yourself help and move on, and you will be okay. And do not stay involved with someone like this. And I think it's quite amusing that she didn't get any money, couldn't sell the house, had nothing. That's what she gets, but we can go back and forth. He allowed it, and she took advantage, but still, at the end of the day, she's obviously worse. So lots to learn here in this story, reaffirming the things I talk about today. All right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And to the guy sent in this story, I really appreciate it, sir. I like hearing stories from all different time periods. It's good to hear. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.